I saw a tank with an extended arm. Then we realized they were going in.
They just blew everything back.
The attacks were exactly what David said would happen.
51 days later, it is finally happening.
It looked like a bunch of black dots rushing towards what I called home.
I ran for my life through a fiery hole in the wall.
I just remember stepping around a bunch of dead bodies.
Almost 3 decades ago, this 51-day standoff in Waco, Texas changed everything. For the people who were there, the memories are still very real, as it was one of the most tragic standoffs in U.S. history. Today we're going to discuss life inside the Branch Davidian walls, what happened in those 51 days, and how we can prevent it from ever happening again. My name is Lauren Lake, and this is American Standoff, the story of Waco.
We moved to the compound near Mount Carmel just after I was born and stayed until the raid when I was 6, all because my mom was convinced David Koresh was the Son of God.
Koresh claimed he was of greater importance than Jesus. He believed there would be a big battle with the forces of the world. We were all taught to kill ourselves by pulling the trigger with a gun in our mouth.
We had no running water and little electricity, as well as a strict diet. Even as little kids, we had hard and fast rules, and any adult could paddle us. We were raised with fear.
When I was on site, David preached that God told him he was the Messiah. It was also very well known that he had many spiritual wives.
I was Koresh's 6th wife. I had a son with him, Sky. I was so under his control that I beat my own 3-year-old son with a wooden paddle until blood appeared for something as trivial as spilling a glass of milk. David preached the government was evil. We all knew, even the kids, that this could mean death whenever. Sky and I moved away just months before the standoff, but knowing my friends and family were still in there was horrifying.
February 28, 1993, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms came face to face with the Branch Davidians, attempting to arrest their leader, David Koresh, for stockpiling illegal firearms and explosives, and because of reports children were being abused. Rumors of the raid reached inside the cult when a local cameraman unwittingly asked Koresh's brother-in-law for directions. Agents decided to proceed anyway, and there was a gunfight. A 45-minute gunfight.
The scene was horrifying. Agents pulling dead bodies off roofs. Koresh had a huge stockpile of weapons, and I heard 1,000,000 rounds of ammo.
The ATF retreated, beaten. 4 agents were dead, over a dozen wounded. It was concluded with a ceasefire over the phone. Then the FBI took over.
There was no reason for the agency to continue with their plan on that day. As an undercover agent in that compound, my job was to give inside information, and I did just that. David Koresh vowed neither the ATF nor the National Guard will ever get me. He was going to fight, and I told the ATF that. His vision of Armageddon was fulfilled by my own co-workers, and that's where they screwed up.
I was the first FBI negotiator to arrive at the site after the botched ATF raid. And early on, I was able to get about 24 kids out in exchange for food and other supplies.
After the initial raid, the cult members barricaded themselves inside the compound for 51 days. Several times the FBI thought they would come out. Each time, Koresh said God told him to wait. Finally, they could wait no longer. There were more reports of children being abused. On April 19th, FBI agent Byron Sage announced to Koresh it was his final chance to surrender. After he refused, agents went in with modified tanks and tear gas.
At 12:32 on Monday, April 19th, I switched off communication with Koresh. By turning that switch off, it was like I had 51 other guys that were overlooking my shoulder, watching me say, we had failed.
Nothing about that day started normally. It was so windy. The tanks came through the front door, and I couldn't help but to think how weird it was to see a tank in my living room.
I kept hoping to see them start filing out towards the road. Instead, shortly after noon, I saw flames erupt from the compound. I went from orders to requests to as the fire spread, please. I didn't yet know all the details, but I could understand the enormity of what had just happened. We just lost dozens of people. I was emotionally, physically, and psychologically just devastated. I was beyond tears.
David told the mothers to take the children to the vault in the bottom of the 4-story tower. But most people were trapped upstairs. At some point, I just made a dive and landed on some sheetrock and just slithered out head first. I looked over my shoulder and that hole was just a mass of flames. And I think, my God, I'm the only one that got out. The other guys didn't even have a chance.
76 Davidians died the day of the tragedy. including Koresh, who was found with a gunshot wound to the head. Most are believed to have died from smoke inhalation, but some children were shot. Many adults shot themselves. Aspects of that day are still a mystery. The largest debate continues to be around who actually started the fires, which erupted from 3 separate places inside the compound.
I never truly considered myself a Branch Davidian, but I stand with them. The FBI started the fires, and I'm sure of that.
We had listening devices in the compound, and we heard cult members discussing spreading fuel just hours before the fire started. Then, smoke poured out from 3 locations simultaneously. I believe the fires were started internally and not by the FBI.
The controversy surrounding April 19th continues to this day. Was Attorney General Janet Reno at fault? She gave the clearance to enter the compound with tear gas. Or did the agents go too fast, not realizing how devoted these people were? After the break, we will look at what happened after the devastation and how we can prevent it from happening again.
He was just so charismatic, and I was just drawn to him.
Katie was completely isolated. Every time I tried to help her, she just completely blocked me out.
Everything just felt really different after I left. I had no idea. I was really lost.
She wasn't the same person anymore. I couldn't get through to her.
And then I found Mountain Springs, and I've never been happier. I've just never felt less isolated or alone in my life.
Here at Mountain Springs, we give everyone a place where they can feel safe and accepted. We give counseling in a calm and supportive atmosphere. Our specialized support groups and group activities help to integrate our patients back into society.
I'm so glad she found Mountain Springs. It's like I have the old Katie back.
At Mountain Springs, we help you find you again. If you or someone you know needs help, we are here.
Those who survived David Koresh's control and the Branch Davidian cult siege were not free once they left the compound. Many still suffer from post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD. Most of the survivors were just children at the time, and the controlling, abusive environment left them scarred.
PTSD is defined as a mental health condition triggered by a traumatizing event, either experiencing it or witnessing it. Symptoms may include flashbacks, nightmares, and severe anxiety, as well as uncontrollable thoughts about the event.
From a very young age, the kids were trained on how to operate guns and fight if it became necessary. Young girls were given a star to signify when they were ready to be involved in a relationship with Koresh. It was deemed a privilege to get a star.
I was only 10 years old when David sexually abused me. I was so young, I hardly knew what was happening, not only to me, but to the other girls in the cult. The trauma of sexual abuse has stuck with me ever since. I still suffer from flashbacks and anxiety. There was nothing I could have done to avoid this pain. It was my mother who brought me to the cult at the age of 5. We need to raise awareness of the dangers of cult life to help prevent innocent children from being forced into cults like I was.
Surviving children in the standoff were shocked by life outside the cult. Even regular actions like bathing and flushing toilets were foreign to the Davidian children. Leading up to the fire, the children who were rescued early from the standoff, they would draw pictures of the compound on fire, clearly showing the event was discussed ahead of time. They would sing and draw dark subjects. They even casually asked if we were going to kill them.
The long-term consequences in the case of the Branch Davidian cult are not unique. There has been lots of research done on how cults and cult-like activity affects the brain.
It's called a viral mimetic infection. Mimetics is an idea that replicates in the human brain and then moves from brain to brain. If everyone around you believes it, you tend to believe it too. Cults work hard to set these ideas in people's heads. They then mold their behavior to match these ideas.
The ATF invested in training with tear gas and automatic weapons. The agency also standardized that training across the board.
They needed to know why we were doing certain things to try to establish rapport and trust. We were very good at doing surgical tactical assaults on a crisis site to rescue hostages. But in a situation like this, you need to adapt. These people did not want to come out. We need to tailor our strategy so it is a safe resolution. We didn't do that, and so we lost 76 people.
When the events in Waco took place, it shook the nation. It brought attention to cults and how the government handles them. We hope and pray that knowledge and training prevents this from ever happening again. For American Standoff, the story of Waco, I'm Lauren Lake. Thank you for joining us.